Hello everyone. I hope everyone is doing great. We got an amazing response for physiotherapy in Canada. Thank you for all the responses. We have taken all the feedbacks very constructive. The new topic, yes, you guessed it right. It is physiotherapy in the United States of America. So, with all the feedback that we got, we are going to release this entire topic into 3 different parts. So, it is much more convenient for everyone to just visit the topic they want to. Okay, so I'm just going to share the screen and we are just going to discuss the objectives first. Okay. So in today's webinar, we are going to cover majorly the education part, the master's program and what else is available in USA, the student life, part-time work during the student life, TDPT, the licensure exam, which is NPTE, the certifications, which is OCS, NCS, and so on, the working culture in USA, working as a physiotherapist, and then finally, we are going to take question and answer session. So without further ado, I would like Nupur to please introduce our speakers today.
Thank you so much, Asmita. It gives me a great pleasure in introducing our speakers, Dr. Mansi Sabne and Dr. Akhila Krishna Kumar. So something about them, Dr. Mansi Sabne, she is an OCS certified physiotherapist as well. She majorly works in the outpatient PT department for the last 4 years. She works mostly with the orthopedics and vestibular patients with occasional neuro clientele. She's certified in vestibular rehab from American Institute of Balance, and recently she got certified by the American Board of Physical Therapy Specialists as an orthopedic clinical specialist. So thank you, Mansi, for joining us. And I'd like to introduce Akhila as well. Thank you, Akhila. So Akhila has completed her TDPT and she's MPT in musculoskeletal sciences. She works mostly with geriatric population, and since past 2 years, she's working in skilled nursing facility handling post-operative orthopedic and cardiopulmonary patients. So thank you both of you for joining us today and giving us your precious time. This will definitely help all the students who are planning to study in the USA and who are planning to work in the USA. So thank you so much. Without further ado, can I just request Mansi to start with the presentation?
Absolutely. So one of the first things that I usually like to touch base with people is, try to understand why you are coming to the United States. Like, it's always easy, you hear it that, oh, okay, it's good to work in the United States because you can do this, you can do that. So it's always good to have a pros and cons list. And that's what we're going to touch base on. So here are the couple of things that Akhila and I discussed and we put together. So just give me one moment. All right. So the biggest pro is, job satisfaction. You actually do what you went to school for. The amount of patients that you see, the culture that you work in, the wide variety of clientele that you get, there's an immense degree of job satisfaction with that. You are exclusively doing only evidence-based practice. What you say, your word has an authority. You're not pandering to patients' demands all the time. So it's a unique culture. It's a unique population that you work with, which is very different from what you experience in India. Not saying one is better than the other, but I think everybody has a choice. And for me, this setting worked really, really well. The second one, which is probably obviously the most, should have been point one, honestly, is financially satisfying. Sure, we all go in this field to, help others, make lives better for everybody, but you still have bills to pay. You still have food to eat. And based off my experience for the year that I worked in India as a physiotherapist, I didn't really see myself climbing that financial ladder as well as my peers who've done something like engineering or some other courses were climbing. So if you come to the United States, the salary definitely depends from which area you are in. If it's a populous state, populous city, your experience levels, all of those things go into it. But typically, you can expect an average salary anywhere from 65,000 US dollars per year when you start. And as you climb up the ladder, it kind of caps off at about $100,000 to $110,000. Again, remember that it takes a very long time for you to go from 65K to 110K. It's not something that is going to happen in 5 years or 6 years. It is investing about 10 to 15 years of your career, putting in, extensive amount of work in building up your skill set, in achieving certifications, and just building up your profile before you get to that point. And most times when you're at the position of 110 or 100K thousand, you are no longer just working exclusively as a PT, you transfer more into a managerial position. The third thing is respect. Largely, PT over here is an interdisciplinary endeavor. So where I work at, I am fortunate to just walk across and talk to our orthopedics, talk to a neurologist if I have any concerns, if I'm not sure the diagnosis that the patient came in with is indeed what they're having. I can actually communicate with those doctors and request for further imaging. So that to me is again a very big thing. I don't necessarily feel afraid to do that because they are an MD and I'm a PT. So that dynamic is never there. I think everybody just understands what your role is. And then there is definitely some degree of autonomy in the services that you provide. So I hardly ever get a script over here which says, SWD or TENS in ultrasound. So it is understood that my education makes me talented and smart enough to, decide what I can do for my patients. Most doctors who provide also know what kind of work culture we are going forwards. Like we are now no longer a modality based, field. We are now more exercise based. So there is an understanding of what we do. And as a result of that, definitely helps how I work with my patients. So these are the major pros. There could be multiple others. I'm sure everybody has their own sweet experience to add to it. The cons are just as important to consider. So it is indeed very expensive to get started as a PT over here. And by that, I mean the amount of money you're going to spend in your education. Even if you choose not to do a master's, even if you choose not to do a DPT program when you come here, you do, just because you're a foreign graduate PT, you do have to take extensive number of exams to even be eligible to take your NPT exam. Because we are foreign educated therapists, our degree has to be evaluated by an international body, which is another $1,000. So it just adds up. So it's very expensive. It's a very daunting task, quite frankly, for anybody to put that amount of finances behind something which could be rather volatile as you go further. And we'll touch base more upon those requirements later on. Then it's the big problem again, the visa immigration problems sometimes that everybody encounters. The way H-1B lottery systems work, not everybody who applies gets an H-1B visa. If you don't get picked, if your name doesn't get picked in the lottery, then you have very little options left for you to continue your status legally over here. And not all the time it is easy to find those options. And most times what it ends up with is you putting all of that money and time into your education only to come back to your home country without reaping the financial benefits of that investment. And then the third thing is it's a very time consuming process, right from when you apply to when you start to till the time you start working. Because again, you're a foreign educated therapist, there is a lot of, you have to prove your mettle all the time. Every single piece of application that you do has to prove, can you speak in English? Did you go to school and learn, manual therapy or medical sciences? Like, did you do all of those things? So you're constantly having to prove that, yes, you are worth it. Your education means enough to be a therapist here. It can be somewhat heartbreaking when you have to constantly do that. But yeah, these three things are also something that everybody should bear in mind before once you decide that you want to consider coming to the United States to work. But yeah, that's what I have here.
Okay. So
when we talk about education and job, Mansi already covered the pros and cons. We should know why you are coming to the United States. Students should first make a informed decision. Do they want to just directly come in for a job, or do they want to pursue higher education in physical therapy? And that would also mean that you'd have different visa statuses. Like if you're coming on a student visa, that will be an F1. With F1 you have your OPT, that is optional practice training, that allows you to work for 1 year in some courses, and work, if you come in on a STEM program, it will give you 3 years of optional practice that you can work United States for 3 years. So students should be clear on what they want to do, and if they're coming on some dependent visa or any other form of visa, then the application process is very different. So I would recommend that you set your sail in one direction and don't try to do all the application process, because as Mansi already told, it's very time consuming process, and a lot of finances are involved, and you need to make an informed decision on what you're doing so that you don't end up being frustrated. When it comes to physical therapy education, make an informed decision, because if you're putting so much finances and resources and you're 21,000 miles away from your family, you don't want to feel stuck in any situation, and that is a lot of emotional trauma. So I would skip the job part and we would go and talk about education here. From 2015, masters has been scrapped in United States. You can't do math. You require a DPT level education to practice physical therapy. But there are few colleges which still offer very good master's program in United States. You have TDPT versus DPT. Now, this is a very common question which people ask. DPT is an entry-level program. It's called Doctorate of Physical Therapy. It's a 3-year program, which is equivalent to our bachelor's program in foreign country. So it's the 4.5 years which we do. It's a bachelor program. But TDPT, it's a bridge course. It's like a transitional DPT or a post-professional DPT that you do after your bachelor's. And this doctorate TDPT helps you to bridge the program or deficiency that you have in your foreign education and the education which is expected by US standards. So what you need to be aware of is, as an external or as in a foreign trained candidate, you won't be entering into a DPT program, because that will take you back to bachelor's, which you've already done. You would require to opt for a transitional DPT program. And transitional DPT programs, let me give you this pointer that US has a lot of TDPT courses, ranging from complete online to complete campus to a dual program of online and campus. If you want to come on a student visa, you do require a campus TDPT program. So you cannot do an online TDPT and expect to get an entry into the United States. And even for TDPT, not every TDPT will offer you an optional practice training. An optional practice training is just working in United States, and after you've done your education, and you can use the education to work and gain experience. But if you don't get optional practice training, then again you won't be able to work in United States and get that financial stability. So this is again one pointer that you should remember when applying for TDPT, that you need an OPT attached to your TDPT, and the TDPT should have international candidates acceptance. So you can read up their online websites. You can ask the TDPT program organizers, and also see if you have campus jobs available. Now, some of the universities have so much international candidates that in the initial semesters, you won't get campus jobs. On a student or an F1 visa, campus jobs they allow you to work only 20 hours per week. And the job has to be in campus. It has to be on campus. It cannot be physical therapy related. You can do either a research assistant or a TA, a teacher's assistant, or work in any Starbucks or McDonald's, but on campus, not away from campus. And you cannot do physical therapy related job if you don't have a license. So these are the pointers that you should remember when it comes to TDPT and DPT. When it comes to higher education, master's program will also have, some of the master's program have STEM programs. STEM programs will offer you 3 years of optional practice training. That means after your education, you can stay in the United States for 3 years and gain the work experience. But these are really challenging courses, and some of the courses in the United States have excellent program for research. So if you're interested in research, make a good profile for yourself back in your country, do a lot of research, publish a lot of papers, and get into these master's program, because this will open an arena of opportunities for you in the latest advances of physical therapy. You have masters in exercise science and kinesiology. Exercise science is more detailed oriented. Kinesiology will cover more of biomechanics. It will teach you cardiopulmonary conditioning, your cardiometabolic conditioning in physical therapy during your performances, or if you have any condition. And these programs are very challenging, and some of the exercise sciences and kinesiology have a very high cutoff passing grade. So students should be aware that if they're coming for such programs, and if they have a, for instance, if they have a cutoff of 90%, and even if you get 89%, you would flunk that course, and it becomes very emotionally taxing for the student, because it's really challenging. Though US universities do a commendable job in inviting international students, they'll make you feel at home. They'll devise they will devise these activities where you're mingling with other international students. They try to reduce the cultural shock, but you have to understand that the journey is your own, and you have to work according to the challenges and the demands that the universities offering, and it's a competitive market out there. So I think so. And then you have your PhD, of course, where you can go into academic, and we can cover that more in our later topics. So for admission of masters and education, it is very simple, that you just need to go to the university websites. You need to first define, you need to enlist, actually, just keep enlisting which universities you want to opt for. My subjective opinion would be that make a chart, make like a Google sheet or a spreadsheet where you have all the courses, all the course requirements, the contact information, the professors that are doing what work they are doing, and if that work resonates with you. If you want to do a master's, I would say that write to the university, write to the professors, and take an appointment, get an appointment for an interview, so that you know that you are actually on the same page of what you want to do. You don't want to come in for doing a master's on exercise science program and then end up realizing that this is not something you were looking for. Now for TDPT also, the process is very simple. You have the universities which will put your prerequisites on their website. You have your educational credits that they require, and for educational credits you have to match your Indian marks, your foreign trained education marks or credentials to your US standards. So there is this body called as ETS or WES, which helps you to do academic evaluation and convert your university marks or syllabus into US standards. And they have to directly send it to the universities. And the universities will also expect you to send a list of documents which have to be a true copy notarized by your universities. And universities have to send. You as a student do not send anything to the university until very specifically mentioned on the website or requested by the university on your email. And that's it. So once you get your acceptance, then you get your F1 visa, which is supposed to be sent by the university. And on that basis, you can apply for your visa interview. And if you crack your visa interview, you can enter into the United States for education. I can even touch, yeah.
Couple of documents that I think I can add to your application process for a master's program is you need to have a letter of recommendation. Most universities require anywhere between 1 to 3 letters of recommendations, which will come from your professors, where you did your physiotherapy program. It could come from your place of employment if you did work somewhere. Those letter of recommendations have to again be in a sealed envelope. That is a part of documents that you send to the university. The other thing which you have to write yourself is a statement of purpose, or commonly known as SOP, when basically you explain to the university why should they consider you, or why should they accept you in this program over somebody else. Word of advice, there are multiple places, we have a lot of career counselors around in Bombay who help, or across India, who help you draft these SOPs. They take plagiarism very seriously, so you can't have more than certain number of words in a statement matching another statement someone else has written. So they run your SOPs through these softwares which will identify plagiarism. So if they find evidence for plagiarism, your application goes to a dead end right there, no matter what your marks score, no matter what your worksheet says, no matter what your letter of recommendations are. I have noticed that it really helps to write a good statement of purpose. So get your resources, find friends or family members who can help you draft a good one. Make sure it's grammatically accurate. Make sure it does a good job of highlighting you as a person. And then the third document that you have to put in is a resume or a curriculum vitae, which basically in brief lists, your professional accomplishments. Ideally, a resume, if if you've worked for under 3 years and, or you're just applying, you graduated your physiotherapy program and you're applying for your master's, make sure your resume is not ridiculously long. Your resume has to be no more than 2 pages. And that is like pushing it. You don't need to list accomplishments like, the cultural events that you've headed in your physiotherapy program or anything like that, or any local, like anything that has more metal on a state or a national level, that can be included in your resume. But anything that is very strictly to your school or your college, that can be excluded. If you start putting that, then just means that you're trying to make your resume look longer and fancier. And that is a drawback. So these are the other additional documents that you have to put in your packet when you send it for application to the university before you get their acceptance.
I think I would like to add a thing, and we have it on the screen also. GRE and TOEFL are
Yes.
also something that we should consider, because when you apply for these master's program, you definitely have to give GRE and TOEFL both.
Yes. Those, and I think, are also requirements. I think TOEFL is also a requirement for your visa application, because for an H1 or for an F1, they need to know whether you're proficient in English. So TOEFL is definitely something that all universities require. There are certain universities in the United States that do not require a GRE, but there are certain that do. So I think you invariably end up taking that exam as well.
And also, I think like when we went to US and when we applied, we were always told that when we give GRE, it's always better on your visa status also.
Yes,
if your
it definitely
doesn't require GRE, it is wise to just give a GRE, because that makes your profile much more stronger.
Absolutely.
But I would like to add that candidates who are just looking for a job or who are not pursuing higher education, they do not require GRE, because sometimes if you give GRE and you don't score really well, or if you're that might actually end up looking bad on your profile. And it is again a financial resource.
So the best way is to just go to the university website and check out what documents they require. Like my university required a GRE. GRE was compulsory, and then we had to give GRE. So just check out.
And when I went, I didn't have to have a GRE. So I didn't have a GRE mandatory as my requirement. So you can see how much variability there is in just one country. So like Akhila mentioned, as far when you're on an F1 status, which is what most of you will come in, that is your student visa, you are legally allowed to pursue only 20 hours, no more than 20 hours of work per week, which has to be strictly on campus. Most universities that accept international students have an international student guidance body where you can go and discuss with them what your employment options are. So your on-campus job opportunities, depending on how big your university is, can be far too many or can be far limited. You make minimum wage when you do these jobs, which is depending again which state you are in. I think I worked in Pittsburgh and we earned, our minimum wage was $7.50. But it's only 20 hours and they have to be on campus. Do not pursue any off-campus jobs.
Like in our university, the bare minimum was 12.5.
Right. So it depends again where you
Yeah,
are.
but then Boston is a very expensive
It's
city.
also expensive,
Yeah.
right?
Then
So it evens
comes
out.
down to the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Something I would like to add is, like, in my university, they didn't give us, they didn't, the part-time job was included in the course. So we got a tuition fee waiver instead of salary, which was pretty helpful too, because if you have tuition fee waiver, you can use your resources for your day-to-day expenses. But you should understand that if you had in a challenging program and you're doing part-time job and your program, and if you're applying for your license or you're preparing for your license, the time management is again a factor that you should consider in your mind, that part-time jobs can become too challenging.
Especially, I think, so Asmita went to Boston, Massachusetts General, and her program was about 18 months, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
And then I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and my program was only 11 months.
Mine was
so
16, but
right, which was back in the day. But so essentially we covered the same amount of credits, but it was more jammed into a shorter span of time for me. And then I also had to take those additional exams, which we touch base on, and then maintaining your employment status. So you really stretch yourself thin. So it's always good to connect with other students who are from India, preferably who have done the same course as you have, just so you get first-hand knowledge and information about what it is like.
Amazing. So I think, Asmita, we can start with the question and answer.
So yeah, let's start with question and answer session. The first question is already answered, but just let's sum it up. Are master's degree courses available? So I think we have already answered that now the master's program is not available, but still a few of universities give master's programs such as exercise science and kinesiology.
Right now, I know University of Pittsburgh no longer has a master's program.
Yeah, so, and MGH has already stopped. Like
MGH has already stopped as well. So your options are going to be extremely limited as far as master's courses are available. And even if they are, definitely make it a point to see if that is an accepted entry-level degree for you to pursue your licensing exam.
Okay, this is a good question. Do we get clinical exposure in our education in USA, or is it only research-based?
Clinical exposure, again, depends on what kind of program you are in. Mine was a strictly in-class program, so I did not have any clinical exposure while I was working as a student in my course. I do know a couple of people did apply for after they graduated, they did apply for like these volunteer and shadow positions at local hospitals, where you just basically go and follow a therapist while he or she is treating a patient. You don't get to do anything. You're not even allowed to touch the patient. Even if they are falling, you can't touch them. So basically that is something that you can do. That is the extent of your clinical exposure that you can get while you are while you are a student. It is a little different in terms of how you study. In the United States, there is no hard textbook that you follow. It is largely evidence-based. So you do a lot of research article studies, you do a lot of peer-reviewed articles, you clinically appraise those, you read those, and try to incorporate those in your test. I mean, most of your tests are asked based on those papers that you will read. So it's not as much as textbook-based education. Anything you want to add, Akhi?
So when it comes to clinical education, most of the transitional DPT programs won't have any clinical experience at all. When I was doing my TDPT, I did get to shadow in an outpatient clinic, but that was clearly because of my mentor, and I was a research assistant, and he used to go for a clinic. And as Mansi said, you can't touch, you're not a licensed physical therapist, so you can just be a doll. You can't do anything, just observe. But it did help me in cracking my NPT, because you get to know the updated standardized practice in your day-to-day life. And you have something called a CPT, that is continuous practice training, that some courses offer, where I think so NYU has some arts and pathokinesiology program, which you have internships. Some of the courses, if you ask them, but you have to be very research oriented, or you have to be very one track mind that you want to really do that, get that experience. Of course, if you don't have licensing, you cannot you can just shadow even if you're getting that clinical rotation, but some universities will send you to some clinics or some other states to do a continuous practice training, which is a part of your university program. So maybe if your program is for 2 years, in 6 months you can go, or 3 months you can go to some other university, get your experience and come back. And that really helps, because if you are going to that state and you want to get licensed in that state, sometimes those clinical rotations will pick you up for a job, and if that is what you want to pursue, you get an heads on or a heads up for the research or the advances in your clinical practice that you want to do. So, but as far as most of the programs are considered, if you don't have a license, you don't get too much clinical exposure.
I would like to add here, because I had a very different experience actually, because MGH, where I did my master's from, did give us a little bit of clinical exposure in our course thing, because we had 2 semesters and we had one entire subject called clinics, where we used to go and we used to treat patients, of course under supervision. So we were given a pair, like we were in pairs, and one of us used to work as a PT and the other person used to work as a PT aide under supervision. Definitely we had a supervisor, and these was something very similar to free clinics, I would say. So we used to go to our clinics and we used to treat patients, and we used to get a good clinical exposure on that aspect. We were also, a few of us also got lucky, and they also sent us, outside our institute. So maybe a old age home shelter where we used to go and treat patients in their houses. So we did get a lot of clinical exposure through our course structure. So it definitely depends on the courses also, what your courses are giving. So yes, like we were lucky to have the clinical part.
One more point is, like, all courses do offer excellent simulated program. Like US has good advances in technology, and they will simulate your clinic and they will give you like models, and that is also one form of clinical education. You might not be actually seeing a patient, but they have very high advances in simulating your clinic or your module, what is happening in a rehab or a cardiac unit, and that can also help you gain your clinical experience.
That's great. Okay, so what is the exact difference between DPT and TDPT? Akhila, we've already answered this, but can you just tell us a little bit more about TDPT? What exactly is the course structure and how, like, the duration of TDPT?
So TDPT usually ranges from 1 year to 18 months. Some of the courses, as I already told you, can be completely online or can be on campus. The on-campus TDPT program usually covers most of the things that you have done in your bachelor's, but the recommended practice guidelines that are practiced in United States. Like you might have read about orthopedics or a total hip replacement or a knee replacement in your bachelor's, but here it would give you practice guidelines. The TDPT would give you practice guidelines for what kind of treatment or what kind of standardized practice is used in United States. And I think so TDPT is really beneficial in cracking your NPT also, because you are reading a lot of articles, you're reading a lot of updated practices that is happening in the States, and your NPT is actually designed what NPT does is, like, every 5 years, the NPT would conduct a survey across United States to understand the latest practices recommendation, and that would be your NPT portion. So I think so DPT really helps you to gain knowledge for cracking your NPT, and it is a bridge course, an excellent bridge course to understand and understand the nuances which we might have missed during our bachelor's.
Yeah, that was great. So there's one question, I'm not sure if we know about this, but still we can go ahead and try and answer this. The University of Montana is offering a TDPT from India by collaborating with IPTA and Rehab Essentials. Would this be accredited and recognized in the US?
So just off the bat, if it is something that they are doing in and from India, it's not going to help you get a visa. Like, you're not going to get the student visa. H1B is a totally different thing. So you won't be able to get into the country just because you are doing that program. An accreditation for a particular university is something that can be found on the university website. It may be internationally accredited. It has to be CAPTE, CAPTE. It has to be CAPTE accredited university. And then that is something that you can check on the university website. If they have a CAPTE accreditation, that course will be recognized when you apply for your license or for a job in the United States. But if you are sitting in India and doing that as an online course, you're not going to get into the country. You won't be able to apply for a visa to help you get into the country just based off that degree. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps.
Okay.
Thank you. So the last question, post doing a master's in UK, how do I go about moving to the States? What courses?
Depends again, what this person's situation is. Like, are they planning to go there as a student? Are they planning to go there with their spouse or with their partner? All of those things will determine like what courses he or she may have to take. If you're going as a student, I think your route pretty much stays kind of constant, maybe a little shorter process to go through. You probably will still have to do a credential evaluation because course structures are different in UK versus United States. I don't think you would have to take the TOEFL because if you've had your education or any form of experience in UK that kind of over a period of, I think, 3 years, I think that grants you proficiency in the language. But I think the bigger question over here is if we had more information, like if, depends on what level of education they are at. If they've already done their education, they're only looking to come here and work. They'll have to do like the whole NPT and everything because you're licensed in UK doesn't mean you get licensed in the United States. Okay, anything you want to add?
So if they are, if already completed masters in some other country, definitely that gives them more academic credentials. So their standard of practice when they compare it with US would be at a slightly higher value because they would have completed those credits that is required to give NPTE. They would definitely have to crack the NPT. There is no go.
Yeah, there's no. Yeah. So it very much depends on what their situation is. It's quite a broad question.
So thank you so much, Mansi and Akhila. You enlightened us a lot about the education and the part-time job prospects that we can have when we are studying there. So I think that was pretty much what we covered today. And the next will be on NPT and the license procedure that happens post our education. So that will be the second topic that we will be touching on. So to all our viewers, hang on to it. Our next webinar will be coming in. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.